3 months ago, Jayden DeLeon lost the biggest race of his life by 100th of a second. One single blink. The kid who beat him, Quincy Wilson, is an Olympic gold medalist and the fastest high school quarter-miler who ever lived. Everyone figured that result settled the argument. But DeLeon did not. He went back to Hayward Field, and this time he flipped the whole story upside down. Here is how it happened. Jayden DeLeon is a Maryland kid, a class of 2026 sprinter, headed to LSU in the fall. For most of his career, nobody put his name at the top of the lists. He was the runner-up, the other guy in the lane who finished just behind the star. Last year, at the New Balance Outdoor Nationals, he placed second to Quincy Wilson and clocked 46.33 seconds. That is a strong time, but it was nowhere near the conversation about the best 400-meter runner in the country. DeLeon even admitted that he doubted himself after that race. Being the guy who finishes just behind the star is a hard place to live. Every race gets measured against someone else's name, not your own. DeLeon felt that weight every time he stepped on the track behind Wilson, but instead of letting it crush him, he used it. He went back to practice and worked on the one thing that mattered most, his finish. He knew that close was not good enough anymore. Then something shifted last summer. At the AAU Junior Olympics, DeLeon split 44.5 in a relay leg, a time only a tiny handful of high schoolers in all of history had ever touched. That run changed the way he saw himself. He stopped thinking like an underdog who simply hoped to hang on, and he started thinking like a runner who could actually win. His mindset heading into the big meets became simple: shock the world. A split like 44.5 does not happen by accident. It comes from months of grinding through workouts that most people never see, early mornings, sore legs, and races that do not show up on highlight reels. DeLeon's coaches noticed the jump too. They started talking about him differently, not as the runner-up anymore, but as a real threat at the top of the sport. To understand why DeLeon's victory matters so much, you have to understand who Quincy Wilson is. Wilson is one of the most decorated young athletes the sport has ever produced. At 16 years old, he became the youngest American man ever to make an Olympic track team, and he walked away from the Paris Olympics with a gold medal as part of the United States 4x400-meter relay. He owns the fastest high school 400 in history, a stunning 44.10. He won 4 straight national indoor titles, all the way from his freshman year through his senior year. People inside the sport call him the greatest high school quarter-miler of all time, and they are not exaggerating when they say it. Coaches around the country use Wilson as the standard every young quarter-miler gets measured against. When recruiters talk about the next wave of American sprinting talent, his name comes up first. That is the runner DeLeon was chasing. So when these two finally lined up indoors this past March at the New Balance Nationals in Boston, the entire track world expected a Wilson win. He was going for his 4th straight title, and he had never lost on that stage. What the crowd got instead was one of the greatest high school races ever run. Wilson burst out fast, the way he always does, and grabbed the lead through the first bend. DeLeon stayed glued to his hip the entire way around. Coming down the home straight, DeLeon launched into a furious charge, closing the gap inch by inch. At the finish line, it was almost impossible to tell who had won. The clock read 45.37 seconds for Wilson and 45.38 seconds for DeLeon, 100th of a second. These were the 2 fastest indoor 400s in high school history, run side by side, in the very same race. The crowd inside the arena did not know what to do with what they had just watched. Fans pulled out their phones to check the clock twice, certain there had been a mistake. There was no mistake. 2 teenagers had just run themselves into the history books in the same 60 seconds. Wilson got the win and a brand new national record. DeLeon got the heartbreak. But he also walked away with something far more valuable. He had proof that he belonged at the very top. And that is the thing about losing by a blink. It does not feel like a defeat. It feels like an invitation. Then came June and the USATF U20 Championships, held once again at the historic Hayward Field in Eugene, Oregon. This is the meet that decides which young athletes represent the United States at the World U20 Championships. The stakes were enormous, the rivalry was still raw, and the whole sport wanted to see one thing. Could DeLeon finally close that razor-thin gap? This time, the result was not close at all. DeLeon took command of the race and crossed the finish line first in 44.52 seconds. Wilson finished second in 44.84. After losing by a single blink back in March, DeLeon turned around and beat the Olympic champion by a clear, comfortable margin. Revenge delivered on the biggest junior stage in the country, with a spot on the World U20 team going to both of them. For DeLeon, that win was not just about beating a rival. It was about proving that March was not a fluke. He had spent 3 months replaying that 100th of a second over and over, and now he had an answer to give back. And that winning time, 44.52 seconds, is where this story gets even bigger. It is the second fastest 400 meters ever run by a high schooler. Ever. The only person ahead of him on that all-time list is the same man he just defeated, Quincy Wilson, who still holds the record at 44.10. Think for a second about what that actually means. DeLeon did not just win a race. He launched himself into rarefied air, onto a list of names that defines the absolute ceiling of the sport. He is now chasing one of the most respected records in all of high school track. And the only thing standing between him and the history books is the exact rival he just beat head-to-head. The student is now within striking distance of the master. Performances like this do not stay local for long. Right now, the entire track world is obsessed with teenage phenoms. Over in Australia, a young sprinter named Gout Gout has people whispering the name Usain Bolt, breaking records in the 100 and the 200 meters before he's even out of his teens. That is the kind of generational hype the sport reserves for only a tiny handful of athletes on the entire planet. And what DeLeon just did, beating an Olympic gold medalist while running the second fastest high school 400 in history, is exactly the kind of run that forces him into that same conversation. When a teenager clocks 44.5 and takes down an Olympic champion, the whole sport stops and pays attention, from coaches to rival runners to the young stars watching from the other side of the world. That is how fast DeLeon is climbing. The bigger story, though, is what happens next. The World U20 Championships are coming to that very same Hayward Field this August. DeLeon will be there. Wilson will be there. The rivalry that produced a 100th of a second photo finish indoors, and then a clear revenge win outdoors, is nowhere near finished. If anything, it is only just getting started, and the next chapter could be the fastest one yet. Fans on both sides are already counting down to August. Some think Wilson will reclaim his record on home turf. Others think DeLeon has an even bigger gear left in the tank. Nobody really knows. That uncertainty is exactly what makes this rivalry must-watch. So here is exactly where things stand. Quincy Wilson is still the record holder, still an Olympic gold medalist, still one of the most famous young runners in America. But his path to the top is no longer wide open. He now has a serious rival who stared him down, lost by a blink, and came right back to beat him on the biggest stage. Jayden DeLeon is no longer the other guy in the lane. He is the kid climbing the record books at frightening speed, and the entire sport is watching to see how high he goes. Keep this name in your head, Jayden DeLeon, because this rivalry is only getting faster, and the best race between these two has probably not even happened yet.